You are listening to the Hostage to the Devil podcast. Some listeners may find this content disturbing.
Well, hello, Chris. Thanks to you for coming on the podcast.
Nah, thanks, Marty. Pleasure being here.
It's sort of you and I got chatting about a year ago. Is that right? Did you find me through the film, or what was the connection?
Yeah, I saw, I believe we saw Hostage to the Devil a few years ago, my wife and I. And honestly, it was probably our favorite documentary film um, because we just got into this field. And, this to me was you had all the people in it that I've been studying.
Yeah.
And to see them all on one screen and the way it was put together, it was just, it was fascinating. And in fact, I think I might have told you that when I started doing this and people wanted to come into this group and learn and come out in the field, I made them watch that documentary. It was one of the criteria just to see what goes on and who was involved before us.
Yeah, it's finally out in the UK now after the Netflix. So the Netflix deal lasted 4 years, and then it had a little bit of a delay in getting it back in onto UK. I think it's been on the US for a while now, but I'm sure you're sick of talking about your origin story. So because obviously I want to primarily talk about the book and the new book that's coming out. But can you give me sort of like a summary of your origin story to where we are now?
Yeah, it's basically my wife and I got saved in 2009, came into the faith. We really were just living our lives. I was working as a cop already in the NYPD. She was working for New York City Fire Department as an EMT on the ambulance. And when we came together, we ended up getting saved at the same church service, come to faith. And at that time, it happened in the evangelical church. We were both born and raised Catholic, but we strayed away. We were led there, and as soon as we started following God, we went right into ministry, basically with evangelism. Just speaking about what happened to us, and then helping the homeless. The homeless was very big with what we wanted to do, and as the years progressed, different things. God brought us on a very you know, a tough path. We had resistance from the church a lot that we were going to in the evangelical because we were doing more frontline ministry where it wasn't about filling the seats, just bringing in people, bringing in money. We were actually out there trying to help people. And sometimes, I can remember one time bringing a homeless person into the church and it wasn't received well because they just they preached it, but they didn't want a homeless guy in there. And that really opened my eyes to what's going on. And so as we progressed and kept going further into ministry, just fast forwarding a lot to 2018, I decided to go on a mission trip to Africa on my own and just really, explore what's going on outside our country. And, I was there to help the children teach in a Christian school and help with the poverty. But I came across a man who I believe to this day was possessed in the middle of the marketplace. Everything, all the training I had as a medic over the years, I knew that this was not a seizure, which everybody else in the group thought it was. And something happened. I just saw it through the eyes. And, it was the same kind of experience I had years earlier on patrol, midnight patrol, seeing these people, this kind of hatred through the eyes. And I knew there was something deeper going on. When I came back home, I started picking up the study. And that's what led me more back into the Catholic faith, studying all the people who've done this before from this part of the faith. They really knew what they were talking about. They had the understanding of what was going on. And it just, we can go on and on. The origin story it's a crazy story going into my own family haunting and stuff.
We'll get to that in a minute. Do you mind me sort of going a little bit earlier? And you say you were saved at the same time as your wife. Now, where were you in your life when you had that sort of crossroads moment?
It fell apart. And that's really what, a lot what the book's about as well. People were just expecting a book about haunting stories, but it's really about how God prepared us. we both had tough lives in our own way. And when we met, we came together, we met in the city, we met at the police precinct, actually. She was coming in to treat a prisoner. And we kind of, it was one of those passionate, quick relationships. We really fell in love with each other, but we still had a lot of baggage in our hearts and our minds from our childhood and, growing up. And so we had a very big blowout and things just started to fall apart in a very big way. Relationships, we split up. She has two children. At the time when we met, I had two children, both divorced. And it was one more, strike, one more big blow to both our lives. And I remember I gave up. I said, I just don't see hope in anything anymore. And a friend of ours, a mutual friend, referred us to the church and said, why don't you just go together, come and see what's going on. And that's where the miracle took place. You can't fake it. We walked out of there two changed people, and the relationship, just came back together. God took us step by step, showed us little things within each other, what's in a relationship. And then at the same time, how to, really raising the children in more of a godly way, and then going out to help, help our neighbor, love God and love neighbor. And it's transforming.
Is it fair to say that you are who you are now in the line of work that you do now purely because of the shrapnel that you received earlier on in your life, as lived an experience? I think a lot of people do need to get to that sort of dark night of the soul in order to be sort of spiritually reborn in a sense. Do you feel like that was the moment for you in the church where you felt reborn again, you had the armor back on? What talk me through that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think God said, we know that God is sovereign and he actually is in control of everything, even the bad things that we see in our lives. He has a purpose. And I fully believe that that was all needed and that was all his divine plan. I mean, I couldn't be who I am today and do what I do if I didn't have those past experiences. Um, you know, the devil works in funny ways. He'll give people a cushy life and everything they want, and they'll never put their eyes on God. But I think it's times like that when you're at your darkest and all you can do is look up. That is where the blessing comes. And you know what? I'm grateful for it.
Everyone remembers their first case, so can you talk me through your first case?
Well, see, that's an interesting one because the first case I would say was one I wasn't looking for. I wasn't even prepared. And that was the trip after Africa when I was just studying. And I kind of saw that things were starting to get a little heavy around the house. There was activity starting to happen. And I said, boy, this is what they say. If you want to step into this realm, be ready. So I kind of took a step back. I remember talking with my good friend who's a pastor in one of the churches, and I said, I'm just take a little break. We were going on a family trip to Florida, and that was about a month later. And what's interesting is I wasn't, you could say when people are focused on something a lot, they're thinking about it and they dream about it. I really wasn't at this time. I was going back into the homeless ministry. I had a dream that something was going to happen in some hotel room, and it's very detailed. It's in the book. It's very detailed, but I was being attacked by a demon and a lot happened. And I remember telling Harmony, this was the night before we were leaving for Florida, actually. And she laughed and she goes, you better bring your holy water. So I threw it in a bag. I said, yeah, you're right. So when we get to this hotel, a beautiful resort in Orlando, we were taking one of my daughters for her sweet 16. She wanted to go away instead of a party. These kids, it's amazing. They want these big lavish things. So we go to this nice resort, and the room that the girls are in, the adjoining room for the first 2 nights is haunted without a doubt. They're experiencing crazy activity. They wake up one morning and there's a huge handprint on a wall with 4 fingers. And, I went into it, I investigated, I questioned the heck out of them. And, it was legit as far as they were concerned. And then the next night, one of the girls hears banging as they're sleeping. And she can look across the room in the mirror and she sees a dark figure slamming the bathroom door. All the lights are off except the bathroom, and it's a sliding smoked glass window. And she sees a black figure and she thinks it's one of the girls, maybe stuck. She goes to get up and she looks over and sees all the girls sleeping. So she panics, wakes up the other girl. They start screaming. My wife goes running in. I look at everything and we figure out there's something going on. Now the girls don't want to stay in that room anymore. So now now I'm really looking at it. I'm taking pictures. I'm going in there. I'm looking around, and I can't believe what's going on. I want to go on a nice vacation, and this is the last thing I'm thinking is going to happen. I couldn't believe it. So, long story short, I'm sitting downstairs about midnight the next night. The girls are going for a swim, and they come over. They see me sitting there, and I'm just relaxing. Harmony's sleeping, and they said, "We're not sleeping in that room. We're going to sleep on your floor. We're not going in there." And they're FaceTiming the parents who I know. One of them's a NYPD detective, and it's embarrassing. They're joking, what am I going to say? So I make a decision. The girls go to the pool. I text my daughter. I said, "Don't come up to the room." I said, "I'm going to go up and do a blessing." Obviously this goes against a lot what we're trained and taught about, but what are you going to do in that situation? And, I've been in the field, the streets for a very long time, being a medic, being a cop, doing evangelism ministry at that time for 12, 13 years. So I go up and I actually go up and do a blessing. I go through the Catholic faith. I do a Catholic blessing and nothing happens. There's no crazy Hollywood activity. There's nothing happening. And, for the next 2 nights, 3 nights, nothing happened. The girls actually slept in a room, no activity, and everything calmed down. When I came home, I kind of let it go. I said, we talked about it, but I'm going through the family film, the reel, and I find that I took a picture in their room by accident. I don't know when I took it at that point, and it showed a spirit on the film, clear as day. I go show it to a few people who know a lot more than I do, and they said, "This is bad." So I said, "Holy cow." So I called the hotel, and this was a big thing because how do you call what are you going to say? And I kind of, they were kind of giving me the runaround. And I said, "Listen, I'm not looking for a free trip here. I'm telling you, this is what's going on. I caught this in here. This is what happened to the girls." And the other part of the story is the maid stopped coming by the room. So they would bring sheets and water to our room, but it would never go into the girls' room. So I let them know. I had a meeting with the director of operations of this big hotel. It's a very big chain. And at the end of it, she believed me, and they end up shutting the room down to guests. So I knew something was going on there. After that happened, I made the decision, and a lot happened within that. I started interviewing my wife, all the girls on their own, just like you would, at the precinct. And I started building a case file. Next thing I know, the case file is like this high. And I said, I feel like, I'm being called into this. I really am getting an understanding of what's happening. And that's where it took off because word of mouth went through the precinct. At that point, I started going to police officers' homes, and that's how that started. That was the first real case, I would say.
We can't really talk about NYPD and demonology without bringing up the main man himself, Mr. Ralph Sarchi. So
Yeah.
Your timeline's different in the sense that had he left the precinct before you, or where's Ralph's timeline compared to yours at the moment?
Yeah, he left I would maybe 10 years before me, maybe a little more. Yeah, and he was, he's the first name that comes up when you jump into this field, especially me being a cop. So he was somebody I looked up to. I took 1 or 2 of his classes that he would do online. I read his book, things like that I can do. So to me, I still do. I have tons of respect for him. I know what he's done and, who he's learned from, so, yeah, he to me is the person I wanted to model myself when I got into this after his attitude, just the way he went about it. It was very, my wife too, we were very, lucky and blessed to see him.
Yeah, I'll be grateful forever for what he brought to the project, the hostage project, and
Yeah,
the footage he brought, and the access, and the stories he brought. I'll forever be grateful to Ralph for how he contributed to the film. It wouldn't be what it is now without Ralph's input and his sources.
Yeah, he has a presence. He has a presence. When he talks, you can see it.
Yeah.
He's there's, there's this thing you can see right away. He's very genuine. So what Ralph says, he means, and he believes. There's no nonsense with him. And that's something, I take that very serious when I talk to anybody, because I'm a skeptic, just being a police officer, I think. And seeing that right away, no matter what anybody else would tell me, that's where the line I would want to follow, because I know he knows what he's talking about.
And how
Yeah.
did the precinct how did they respond to this, to your sort of change in trajectory in regards to your path and your line of work into demonology? How were you received?
It's interesting because it was mixed. Uh, Mixed saying is some people would mock it. Cops have a very crazy sense of humor, and you'd expect it, and I would have to laugh at it. But other ones would take it serious, and I would have a lot of people coming up to me saying, I believe this. I've seen this. Most people, even if the mockers, the public people who make fun of you, they've all had experience. And when you get them alone, they will tell you, now, you know what, I make fun of you, but I believe this. And what happened was something, I never really talked about a lot. And even in the book, I gave it maybe a sentence, because I just didn't want to draw a lot of attention to it. But there was an incident that happened in the precinct a couple of years later, I would say, maybe a year and a half later, where something happened with two cops up in the bunk room. And, they came and got me. It turned into a big thing. And it got around the precinct. And the higher ups actually brought me in on an overnight to go bless the precinct. I never spoke about it. I didn't say much, but it got around. And what's interesting is, so I would say the next week, when I remember this was pretty funny, that one of the cops who was publicly making fun of this the whole time, and he was doing it in front of, the groups of people. And I said to him, I said, listen, you're going to keep making fun until, you need me one night. And no joke, a week later, a cop calls me over and says, listen, go talk to him. And I said, why? Just go talk to him. And he was loud in front of everybody. He goes, I believe you. He goes, I believe you now. And I said, what happened? He goes, I was in my room last night. He lives alone. And he goes, I felt somebody jumping on my bed. I couldn't move my feet. And the bed was moving. And when I got up, he cleared the house, like a cop would. He thought there was an intruder. He goes, I don't see anything. I go back to bed. And 2 minutes later, all the bottles I had stored on top of my refrigerator come smashing down in the kitchen. And he wanted me to do a whole blessing. And we talked about what happened. But, that when that happened, everybody was very cautious. And even the other cops who, would go up to other people and say, listen, you shouldn't make fun of this. This is no joke. Now, what happened is with that precinct, somebody leaked it to the Daily News in 2021, I think it was. It was a year later. And when that came out, I didn't even do any interview in that article. When that came out, everybody knew about it. Everybody. It was the whole the whole department and everybody else. And the next thing I knew, I even had, I had higher up people calling me to their homes in upstate New York and everywhere, bosses, supervisors, because they were having issues they couldn't talk to anybody about. So it was really interesting how God works. And the next thing I knew, I'm doing more work in, the NYPD than anywhere at that point.
Is it right to say that, with the work that you're doing now, what would you describe it as? Like deliverance, or what's I don't like to label things, but how would you sort of pigeonhole the work that you're doing now?
It's funny. I was just asked this recently too. I don't put a name on it anymore. It's definitely not deliverance. Deliverance would be more of the evangelical type, and that's not what I do. There's a whole, when you get into this kind of discussion, you're getting into theologies and you're getting into, what's biblical. And, that's a long conversation, and I have a whole opinion on deliverance. And then when you look at Catholicism, the way it's done there, that has been an issue for me as well, because if you're not trained by the Catholic Church, that was an issue for me in more than one case. One that I actually described in the book with the Connecticut boy. So You like to call it, as I've learned from others before me, they call it maybe more of a minor exorcism, the blessing of a home. Really, it's just biblical blessings to me. I don't know what kind of name I could put on it, but it entails a lot. Um, More than just going into a home. I'll go in and do a very detailed investigation, uh, long phone calls, medical history, being a medic, and I bring Harmony into this. She's has a very big medical experience as well with FDNY. I was a paramedic actually with the New York City Fire Department in the 90s. So I take that and also being a NYPD cop and kind of investigate the people. The people who are calling too. You want to make sure they're of sound mind. Maybe they believe what's happening, but maybe it could be a mental illness. It's a very, you have to be very rational. You have to be very responsible when helping people, because you don't go in saying it's a demon. You don't go in. I never go in that way, because you could be hurting them. So yeah, it's investigation, and then if we deem it's something spiritual happening, then then we go into a kind of blessing that's been laid out for us by the church.
It sounds to me very much like, with what your line of work is, very much similar to myself, in a sense of, I've had a life before I became a film director, a filmmaker. I've been a high school teacher. I've been a section commander in the Royal Marines. I've been to operational war zones, and I'm now filmmaking and telling stories, and the transferable skills are just incredible. It makes me a better storyteller now, because I have lived an experience. I have had another life before this. And it sounds
Right.
similar to you, as your experiences as a police officer, a paramedic, has basically got you to this point now where you are such a better investigator now, because of the previous work that you've done.
Yeah, there was a saying, I'm trying to remember it directly, but it was always, a man without experience really just has an opinion. And when you have the experience we've seen things that you got to think about it, that most people will never see in their lives. So it does. It develops you. It creates who you are. And then when you walk into these situations, you know, they people ask me, "Hey, do you get very scared?" And honestly, I say no. I know what I'm dealing with, right? But it's not the first time I entered a stranger's house. It's not the first time I had to go investigate if something's happening. And then, so it kind of it builds your makeup of who you are. Are there times where I got, scared out of my mind? Yeah, it's when things happen, certain things, but it teaches you how to handle it, and then how to handle the people you're with responsibly. And yeah, without that, I don't think I know I couldn't even enter this field.
Yeah, I mean, fear is huge in all this. My previous line of work is, we knew who the enemy was. A bit like yourself, you know who the enemy is. So
Yeah.
you plan to have this encounter one day, and you train hard, and you read, and you research, and you again train hard, keep training, and then when it comes to the day of the confrontation, okay, there is fear, because we're all human, but we know exactly what needs to be done, and it's very similar in your line of work as well. And how important it is, someone who, like, we've talked about this off air, about how the devil works in mischievous ways constantly. And I feel like, particularly when you have the paranormal, demonology, and you bring film and television, entertainment, media into this equation, a lot of people who have good intention going in to become, not so much personalities, but to try and spread the message of the devil, the exorcisms, the work, basically. I always feel like they are always corrupted by the entertainment industry eventually. How important it is for you to keep turning the mirror on yourself with regards to the work that you do, because I know a lot of spiritual leaders sometimes neglect the fact that they have to keep working on themselves whilst in this ministry. It's how important is it for you to keep turning the mirror on yourself and saying, is this right? Am I right doing this right now? Do I need to come back into myself, and to make sure that I am good? Because it all starts with you, and finishes with you. So how important it is for you to turn the mirror on yourself?
Oh, it's very, very important. I mean, biblically, that's what we're to do all the time, is to always reevaluate, yourself. Am I walking in the faith? Am I living that biblical life? So it's very important. And yeah, there is a danger when the entertainment industry starts coming after you. And I've had many production companies, well, I'll just give you an example, want to do like a reality show. And then, as I'm talking to them, just make sure, you jump a little and you do this and you do. And I said, that's not me. And I said, that's not real. I said, I'm not going to do that. It's not entertainment. If you want to really look at what's going on, and you know what, we've had a lot of issues and we didn't do it because they want, I'm not going to mention names, but reality, but a lot of people jumping around and, with those fake scares, or they even talked about maybe, well, we'll make something happen, if nothing's going to happen. And you have to take that moment of pause. And that's what my wife's good too, because we bounce it off each other. And I would say things like that. This doesn't sound like something we should be doing. This is, more entertainment. So it gets very tricky, but you absolutely have to keep looking at yourself. You have to, what is my purpose in doing this? Is it now to become a public figure? Or is it to expose and bring it out? And I've had trouble with that at times. I'm not going to lie, because I had so much thrown at me. And, at times I said, wow, I got to slow down, maybe on social media or something, because I'm looking like I'm just trying to build a following and do this, which that's not me. And I took myself away, because really it's for the greater good of the people. So you have to really, you have to absolutely always evaluate yourself. And I'll be the first to tell you that I'm guilty of things. And I believe it's important.
Yeah, I mean, we all have flaws, and the flaws are what makes us who we are, a unique person and soul. But like, with regards to myself, what's really hammered home for me is I went from being a very naive, like Hostage was the first film I ever made, so I was very naive going in, and I was sort of chasing an audience in a sense. I was chasing their love and chasing their please love this film, and just it had mixed reviews, which is what is all about in this industry. And only recently, I would say the last few years, I've really what's grounded in me is my sense of purpose is to continue to tell authentic stories. But the other side to that is the audience will find you. Do not go searching for the audience. Do not, I'm not asking for like people to follow me and to put me on a pedestal. All I'm saying is what's grounded in me at the moment is continue to tell authentic stories, and the audience, the right audience will follow you and find you anyway.
You're absolutely right. And, you made me think, when the entertainment industry came to us, that was a big thing they were pushing. And they said, you need to get more followers. You need to get out there more, and you need to get a following. You need to have millions and this. And I said, that's not me. I said, I don't know how to, I'm 53 years old. I'm not jumping up and down dancing. I said, I'm not going to go do that. And that is a big thing. And what brought me to peace was always going back to God and saying, you know what, this is your plan. I don't have to say anything. If you want this message out, then you're going to let it out. And that's honestly, that's how this book was written. I'm going to tell you that. And this is the truth. I've been asked to write books for years because of, the haunting in Florida and the Connecticut. And I would sit down. I said, there's nothing there. I said, this is just I don't have anything behind this. I don't want to write just a scary story. Everybody's done that. And then when it was time, after more experience with Hollywood and then the churches, I said, you know what? I'm bringing this right back to God. And this book is written more about, God's glory than anything else. The stories are part of it, the haunting stories. But, I started to realize, God, you're in control of this. And I'm just going to lay it out there the way it is. And if nobody buys the book, and if nobody follows, and nobody has any interest, then that's your plan. But I'm not going to go chasing anybody anymore.
Yeah, perfect. So we seem to be on a mirroring journey right now, Chris. So
Yeah.
I think, and we spoke off air about this, about the industry and how, I mean, don't get me wrong, it's full of some of the best people you'll ever meet and some of the worst people you ever meet. and I'm very good. My intuition's very strong, and I've always gone with my guts. My guts saved my life numerous times in previous workplaces. But it's so important to again, it's like you need to go in with regards to the entertainment industry. Obviously, this book is going to be successful, and you're going to get so many offers. I know, I can feel it in my bones. It's just knowing the industry does have a very dark side to it, which a lot of people know about. So it's going in with that sort of mindset and that knowledge that makes you a lot more tuned into those meetings where they dangle those golden carrots and they offer you all sorts. But really, you've got to sort of take a breath, you know.
Yeah.
And also your tribe. I mean, what I found is over time, as I've got older, my tribes got smaller because as you get older, you become wiser, and you know that the people in your life are either there to support you or to keep you suppressed. And my tribe now, who I keep very close to me in my personal and professional life, is very small, and that's important, especially for yourself now stepping into an unknown world of the entertainment industry.
Yeah.
That you just need to make sure you've got your tribe, you've got your pillars of strength around you, so when
Yeah.
you make those decisions, it comes from good intention, and you just gotta keep that good intention throughout. No, corruption, people always get corrupted, but it's always the people who get corrupted who aren't doing the inner work, who aren't turning the mirror on themselves. So, I mean, we could have spent this episode talking about these really fantastical stories of hauntings and demonic obsession and etc. But for me, like, I wanted to get you on for the audience to get to know you more as a person, because I always feel like people, okay, they hear the stories and and it sounds frightening and sensational, but really I think where I think Hostage to the Devil works is I made it more about the man than his exorcism ministry. I mean, it's funny because when I first got offered the project, I was like, right, we're going to open with his first exorcism in Egypt, Cairo, where he assisted when he was, working on the Dead Sea Scrolls. It was fantastical, and it was just sensational. And I just didn't need to do that. I just needed to keep it grounded and to tell a
Yeah.
grounded story through the man himself. And I think people will be fascinated with you as a character in this book and subsequent, whatever this book spins off to be, whatever. It's out of our hands. Your journey is out of your hands. You can make decisions, but I feel like your journey over the next 10 years is purely going to be, if you keep your intention pure, it's going to be very successful. But like I said, just keep keep that tribe close.
Oh, I absolutely will. And I always look back to Jesus. He had a very small circle, right?
Yeah.
So if you're looking at wisdom, you're absolutely right. And that's what I do. Very, very small, is a very few people. Um, because like you said, you have to trust the people you're with. Um, and that's great advice.
Is there another sort of analogy I always talk about is like it's funny because I came back. I had the film already filmed and it was already there, and it wasn't finished yet. But the way I describe it as, it's like a whale carcass in the sea, like a bloodied whale carcass, and then all these sharks started to come. And this is similar boat to yourself now with the book being released, is that's the
Yeah.
whale carcass. And what the sharks do, they come in and they take the chunks that they want and they rip it apart and they go away again. And then you're left with a skeleton of something which used to be alive. So that's the analogy I always talk about with the film industry, is people just take what they want and they just leave the rest. And they'll take a lot more than they need to as well. So no, I don't want to badmouth the industry that I'm also in. Like I said before, it's full of incredible
No,
people, and
that's the
they're
world we live in. Yeah. I mean,
exactly.
that's the world.
It's a continuous balance. Yeah, it's a yo-yo effect. You just got to know how to react to these people who are coming in with the wrong intention. But no, I wish you the best success with the book. Where
Thanks.
can people find the book? Where can they buy it?
It's on Amazon right now, called Into Darkness. And that's the easiest place you can get it right now. I think it's all over. I have it international as well, so you can get it.
And if I
They
was
have,
to ask you, what would be your sort of golden ticket moment, in a sense of what would you want to do with your story? What would be the perfect next step for the story?
Where I would want it to go.
Where would you
basically.
feel it resonates? Is it television? Is it film? Is it more books? What is it?
I want to see it on a screen. I think that I wrote the story in the third person from an outside perspective purposely, so people can really get a feel of the story more than me just giving my feelings. I would love to see it on a screen, and whatever. I believe it could be a series. I believe it could be on a screen. Whatever, that would have to be something worked towards. But that'd be the next step for me, because I'd love to visually see it and people get a real understanding of what's in the book.
Right, mate. Like I said before, I wish you all the success with the book. And
Thank
when you get the film offer, when you get the film made, I'll get you back on and we can talk about it more.
you. That'd be great. All right, thank you very much.
Cheers, Chris. See you, mate.
Bye.
Thanks for listening, and remember, we have a Facebook page too, so please give us a like and buy us a coffee over at buymeacoffee.com to help us keep this podcast going. And it would only be right to finish with the main man himself.
Satan is always represented as a snake. Lucifer is a scorpion. They have two different functions. We only spirits which have no bodies, and Lucifer and Satan haven't got bodies, are only distinguishable by their functions. And Satan's main function is to kill, to liquidate. Lucifer's main aim is to deceive. He's the liar.
So they're two separate entities.
Two separate entities, yes. The beginning of it all started off when there was a revolt by angels. 1/3 of the angels created by God revolted and said, "We will not serve," led by Lucifer and Satan. That was the beginning of it. Then when man was created, they started taking part in man's universe and trying to seduce him away from God, as it is in the Bible. That's the origin of evil.
And of course, it still goes on.
It goes on every day. They were created for this cosmos, and they intend to keep acting in it until the final day when this cosmos will be wiped out, and they will have to descend and live in hell forever.